We now have 27 of these movies to talk about. When will it stop? Never. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be ranking all 27 Marvel movies from our least favorite to our favorite. This is because Spider-Man No Way Home just came out. And a lot of these movies we're not going to go full dive into because we've done this video twice this year. It's just a refresher. Before we do that, make sure to hit the like button, comment your MCU ranking down below, including No Way Home, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future MCU videos. So we're going to go ahead and take turns going from our least favorite to favorite. Last place for me, Thor: The Dark World. It is the most irrelevant, boring, bland MCU movie. You've heard me say that multiple times, but there you have it.
Last for me is Incredible Hulk.
That's my 26. That movie is also just so far removed from the MCU. It's unnecessary and one of the least rewatchable by far.
And my 26 is Thor: The Dark World, so look at that.
Teamwork. Next for me is Captain Marvel, another movie that, again, is so hard to rewatch. It just feels like this missing Phase 1 movie that I never want to go back and revisit. Nick Fury steals the show, as well as Goose.
25 for me is Thor. It's fine.
Next for me is Iron Man 2, a movie that's nostalgia heavy for me, and I will always love that epic suit-up scene, but it's got so much going on. It's wildly convoluted, and again, it's just not one that I rewatch that much.
Next for me, Guardians 2. I am not a Guardians person. I love the Guardians. Not the biggest fan of their movies. It's a weird thing for me. I love them in Infinity War, though.
It's funny you mention that because Guardians 2 is actually next on my list. Again, this is a very messy movie from the start. They're jumping around to so many different planetary settings. It almost makes you nauseous. And the characters in this movie are just harder to connect with as they're separated. We don't see the camaraderie and teamwork in this movie as we see Peter with Ego throughout the movie, Rocket and Groot are off with Yondu. So they're so separated that when they come back together at the end, I enjoy those moments in the movie. It's just very scattered. That's a word I used to describe Guardians 2. Soundtrack's a bop, though.
Next for me, Iron Man 3. Similar to Guardians, not the biggest Iron Man movie fan.
Next for me is going to be Ant-Man and the Wasp, a movie about people chasing down an object that has fun moments, but again, compared to the grand scheme of the MCU, this is one of the smaller scale stories, which can kind of be annoying. It was a nice little refresher after Infinity War. The post-credit scene is very dope, but this movie is a little forgettable compared to the rest of the MCU slate.
Next for me is Iron Man 2. See previous statement for why.
Next is going to be Iron Man 3 for me, a movie that upset me highly when I originally saw it, but Shang-Chi kind of wrote the wrongs of the flaws I had with it. When it comes to Trevor, Aldrich Killian sucks as a villain, and the fact that it's kind of a Christmas movie saves it, but that's it.
Next for me is Captain Marvel. I enjoyed this movie. I don't really necessarily rewatch it all that much. I feel like it's hard to rank Marvel movies because all the bottom tier ones are just like, they're fine. I wouldn't rewatch probably, but it's whatever. I like cats. That's
Fair.
probably why it's high.
Next for me is Thor, the original movie. I think it's fun. It's very middle of the road, plays it safe, and I really love the first 30 minutes of the movie, especially the battle with the Frost Giants. That is sick.
Next for me is Far From Home. Up until recently, not the biggest MCU Spidey fan, and especially not of Far From Home.
Next for me, we have Eternals. I like Eternals, don't get me wrong, it's a solid movie. But in the grand scheme of things, the movie tries to shove way too much down our throats really quickly. In a 2.5 hour runtime, you're shoving in years of content. It's just a lot to soak in. I've seen the movie twice, and I do enjoy it. I think there's certain characters that stand out. Others aren't fleshed out enough for my liking. It's not one that's that rewatchable, I think. It's on the longer side, like I said. I'm interested to see where these characters play into the MCU down the road, and there's a lot of cool action and ideas in this movie. The execution is just a little muddled.
Next for me is Ant-Man and the Wasp. I love Hope Van Dyne. I love all the characters in Ant-Man very much. I'm hoping Quantumania is better than Ant-Man and the Wasp. It should be. It's a fun movie.
Next is my hot take every single time I make this video. Black Panther. I think the movie's fine. I don't love it by any means. I think Killmonger's an overrated villain.
Visually stunning.
Yeah, it's got some cool visuals and one of, if not the best scores in the MCU.
Speaking of scores, I guess, but soundtracks, Guardians of the Galaxy is next for me. It's good. It's there.
Next, we've actually got Doctor Strange, one of the most visually impressive MCU movies, I would say. And it's a solid origin for Stephen Strange. And like I have mentioned before, the What If episodes really add to this character for me. I am a fan of where they're taking this character down the road. There's a lot of story left to tell for him, and Doctor Strange is such a solid origin.
Next for me, Age of Ultron. It's a good installment to the Avengers movies. Least favorite of the Avengers movies.
So next for me is going to be Avengers Age of Ultron. This is a movie that does a good job of building that team dynamic the Avengers have. Clint actually has like the MVP moment of this movie where he's like, you walk out that door, you're an Avenger. Ultron's a solid villain. Action is top notch here. It's just another really solid installment in the MCU that gets too much hate, I think.
Next for me is Black Panther. I like this movie. I think I rewatched it semi-recently, like within the past couple months. I'm not the biggest fan of Killmonger. I like the character Black Panther, and I really like the romance in this movie that I kind of forgot about. And I like the Dora Milaje.
Next for me is actually going to be Black Widow. a movie that I quite enjoy. And if you have noticed, there have been some shifts in my list since last time, but I do enjoy Black Widow, especially the presence of Yelena. She is a scene stealer, and seeing her in Hawkeye is even cooler. Red Guardian's a hilarious side character. This is a solid finale for the character of Natasha Romanoff, even though her real finale is an Endgame, but this is a nice little send-off for her. And it's a safe prequel movie that has terrible villains, but I can kind of look past it because of the fun moments it does have.
Next up for me is Eternals. I enjoyed Eternals quite a bit. Some of my new favorite Marvel characters came out of Eternals, and I can't wait to see them again. My beautiful, beautiful Macar. Did you miss me?
I'm just waiting for more Dane Whitman. Next for me is Spider-Man Far From Home. This is a movie that I think, again, receives too much hate. It's actually made its way up my list quite a bit since I rewatched it. Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio has a hell of a time in the movie.
I remember it all too well.
The patriarchy. It's so different from some of the other Spider-Man movies that it's honestly a blast. While some of the humor does fall flat and it feels a little off at times, it still has the essence of what I think a good Spider-Man movie has, as we get to see Peter Parker struggle, mess up, and kind of make amends with the situation by the end of the movie.
Next for me is Ant-Man. I love Paul Rudd. Love me some Paul Rudd. All the time. Ant-Man's a fun character. I love Hope. I love all of it.
Next for me, we got Captain America, the First Avenger, one of the better classics, I would say, in the MCU, just because it's one of those first Phase 1 movies that has like an epic scale to it. It's got World War II vibes.
It's got themes in it.
It does. It's got a beautiful score, and it's a solid origin for one of the better MCU characters. For some, I'm not as crazy about Steve, but it is a beautiful origin story, and the Captain America theme is iconic for a reason.
Next for me is Black Widow. Again, like I said for Eternals, one of my new favorite Marvel characters came out of Black Widow. Yelena, I love her.
Oh yeah, Yelena Belova Supremacy.
I love her. And I've been very much enjoyed seeing her more in Hawkeye because I forgot how much I loved her.
Next for me is going to be Thor Ragnarok, a movie that is slowly slipping in my MCU ranking. I think that with each rewatch, the movie loses its funny value, and it just becomes a little irritating at times, but I still really dig that final act on Asgard and seeing the destruction. Hela is a menacing villain, I will admit, and Thor v Hulk and the gladiator scene is so cool. There's a lot to enjoy with this movie, almost like how you do on Sakaar, like the movie, you just fall into a limbo when you're watching it, because it all kind of meanders for most of the middle portion.
Next for me, Spider-Man Homecoming. I love Spider-Man Homecoming. I think it's a great movie. Fun to watch. What? I'm laughing how I don't say much. Vulture's one of my favorite villains.
Next for me is Ant-Man, the first film in the Ant-Man duology. Paul Rudd just has so much fun in this role, and this movie is so slept on. It's hilarious. The heist vibes are real, and Luis is the GOAT.
Next for me is Captain America, the First Avenger. First of all, I love the 40s, and I love Steve in this movie, and obviously, I love Bucky, so... This is like the Captain America movie with the most Bucky lines probably. It's a feel-good movie. It's not necessarily one that you rewatch often, but it's got a vibe to it.
Next is Spider-Man Homecoming, one of the most fun Spidey flicks there is. While it doesn't have the web-slinging action of the Tobey or Andrew films at times, it still has a very important, impactful story. If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. Tony Stark being that mentor to Peter really hits. Vulture is the GOAT MCU villain if Thanos didn't exist. It's a ton of fun.
Next for me is Iron Man. I have it pretty high, even though I have Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 at almost the bottom. Iron Man 1 is definitely, I think, the best one.
Oh, yeah.
And there's something about it being the first Marvel movie, you know, it just hits.
Next for me is the OG Avengers movie, one of the first movies I saw multiple times in theaters, the first true event in the MCU, and I'll always cherish my theatrical experience as I got to see all these characters on screen, and I thought Hulk smash and the circle shot was the coolest thing ever. Look how far we've come.
Next for me is Thor Ragnarok. I enjoy this movie. I think it's very funny. I love Chris Hemsworth in it. I love Tom Hiddleston in it. Not much to complain about.
Next, we've got Captain America, the Winter Soldier, one of the most sleek MCU movies that has really well shot action. I like seeing the dynamic between Steve and Bucky. The highway fight scene is one of the most well choreographed fight scenes ever when it comes to hand-to-hand combat in the MCU. And I just really dig the spy vibes of this movie. There's a lot to uncover about Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. and corruption. I think it's a little overhyped, but I do enjoy it quite a bit.
Next for me is Avengers, just because it's Avengers.
It's classic, honestly.
It's simple as that. Like, that's all you need.
Absolutely. Next, we have Shang-Chi. This is an absolute blast of a movie that took me by surprise. It's one of the better films of this year, in my opinion. The action is a spectacle. The character of Shang-Chi is one that I didn't think I'd fall in love with, and I did. Especially his relationship with Katie. They're a fun duo. I can't wait to see where they go in the future of the MCU. The soundtrack's a bop here, as well as the score. The movie just has so much charm, but a lot of heart as well. And when Wu is a villain, the father-son dynamic, it really works. Shang-Chi is worth the watch, and it is one of the best MCU movies by far.
Next up for me is Doctor Strange. I love Doctor Strange. I think He's a very slept-on character in the MCU, and I think he has a very slept-on movie. I know that's all going to change when Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness comes out, and then he will be overhyped after that, so I will enjoy it while it lasts.
Next, we've got the original Guardians of the Galaxy. I would consider this one a modern classic, not only for the absolute goated soundtrack, but just seeing this space adventure play out where this ragtag group of people come together and have a fun space adventure. That's really what it is. It's very removed from the MCU, and that works for it because it doesn't feel like an MCU movie. It's not as formulaic. It just feels like a Star Wars movie, honestly, and that's why I love it.
Next for me is Shang-Chi. I loved Shang-Chi. I think it's beautiful. I loved the characters, the costumes, the fighting, all of it. I think Shang-Chi is actually the movie I've seen the most in theaters for Marvel movies.
Next for me is Captain America Civil War. I say this every time I talk about the movie, but I saw it twice the day it came out. Gotta love it. It's a movie that really tackles conflict in the MCU unlike any other film, I would say, just because you're flip-flopping between Cap and Tony the whole time. There's crazy reveals. There's epic action as Avengers are fighting each other in an airport battle. It's a brutal movie. We get introduced to Black Panther and Spidey. It's got everything you want from an MCU movie, and it is one of the best for a reason.
Next for me is Avengers End Game, which might be kind of a hot take having it at number 5. The more I watch it, and then the more other Marvel movies come out, I see a couple more flaws with it each and every time. That being said, I think the last hour of Endgame is perfect. I can't ignore everything that comes before it that I don't like, if that makes sense. Plenty in that movie that I don't like.
Next up for me is the original Iron Man, and every time I talk about this movie, I say I watched it every single day for weeks in the 4th grade when I got home from school. It was my ritual when I got back. It's the OG MCU movie that started it all, so I gotta pay respect to it. But it's also just a very simple story. You see Tony Stark, he sees his weapons are being used poorly, and he wants to shut down his weapons manufacturing, and then from there, the rest is history. Tony Stark is so freaking cool, and he's the best character in the MCU with the best arc, and it all starts here.
Next for me is Captain America Civil War. I'm very partial to the Captain America movies for many reasons. A, I just enjoyed them the most, and B, obviously, it's got 2 of my favorite characters.
So next for me is the newly released Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I won't say any spoilers, but I will say this is the best we see Tom Holland in the MCU by far. This is a treat for everyone who's an MCU fan, a Spider-Man fan. It just delivers on everything you want and more. The action's brutal, it's comedic, it really pulls the heartstrings and goes for some emotional gut punches. I'm not ready to put it at number 1 or 2 yet. I have to rewatch Spider-Man No Way Home a few more times, but we'll see.
Next for me at number 3 is also Spider-Man No Way Home. I can easily see it getting put up to number 1 if I watch it another time. I want to make sure that I really genuinely do like the movie.
And you're not just riding the hype wave?
Yeah, I'm not like, oh my gosh, something just happened that I love. You know what I mean? I have to watch it in a calmer sort of sense to make sure okay, yeah, I like this plot point, I like that plot point.
So my runner-up is Avengers End Game. Obviously, I view End Game and Infinity War as one movie. This is the epic conclusion that has a perfect 3-act structure. Fallout, nostalgia, and then the epic final battle. Not really many complaints here. I could watch End Game on a loop.
Next for me is Avengers Infinity War. 0 complaints about it.
Avengers Infinity War is my number 1 movie. Agreed. It's near perfect, if not perfect. Perfectly paced, I'd say. It's the most rewatchable, fast-paced MCU movie that has all the characters we know and love with some crazy reveals at the end. That's all I really need to know.
My number 1 is Captain America the Winter Soldier, even though that is a very, very, very subjective opinion. It's just I could watch that movie for forever for so many reasons. Bucky, I get introduced to Sam Wilson. I love everything about it.
So that's gonna do it for our ranking of all of the MCU movies. Definitely drop yours in the comments down below. Make sure to hit the like button. Tell us what you think of our list, because we do have some different picks for sure. Where does No Way Home rank? Let us know all that in the comments down below. Follow Cam on all our social medias. They are linked in the description. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future reviews. Check out all the recent Spider-Man and Marvel videos we've put up, because there's a ton of content out there, so don't want to miss it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.